And here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to this special edition of the Pulse of Ithaca. We've got a fantastic show lined up for you today. I'm Pete, your host, and with me as always is my co-host, Mikey Swerves. Today we're coming to you again from the headquarters of the GrassRoots Festival in Trumansburg, New York. And we've got an incredible special guest joining us today. Jeb Puryear of Donna the Buffalo is here to dive deep into the heart and soul of the 33rd Annual Finger Lakes GrassRoots Festival. We'll explore the origins of this iconic event, discover what's new and exciting this year, and talk about how Grassroots continues to unite people through music, dance, food, and community, and a sense of shared purpose. Along the way, we'll learn a little more about Jeb's own journey as a musician, organizer, and community leader. Let's get started. Mike, great to be here with you today.
It's good to see you, Pete.
Absolutely. Jeb, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Good to be back here in Trumansburg again.
Yeah, second episode in a row.
Yeah.
Let's take a little trip up 89.
That's right. Russ is part of our live studio audience today, so thanks, Russ, for joining us.
Three in a row for Russ.
It is. To get him on the payroll here.
He's going to get an executive producer credit soon.
All right, so we got this interview coming up with Jeb here shortly, but first I just wanted to touch on a little bit that's going on around town coming up here in the next couple of weeks, mainly just the Ithaca Reggae Fest.
Which it is definitely not going to rain for.
Absolutely. The forecast looks...
We're all willing it, and it's going to be great.
Fantastic. Yeah, things are shaping up good. For those of you who may not be familiar, the Ithaca Reggae Fest is happening this weekend, July 20th to the 22nd. That's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at Stewart Park here in downtown Ithaca. And this is the 7th annual.
If I may interject,
yes.
There may be one drop.
There may be. How dare you, Jeb?
Wow.
How dare you?
He's putting that out there.
Yeah, it always rains, right? It's going to rain. There's always going to be some weather in the area, especially upstate New York this
any
year.
weekend.
Right.
Particularly.
So, yeah, we've got the free, a kind of a dance party on Friday night at the main pavilion at Stewart Park for Reggae Fest. That's free and welcome and open to the public. And then Saturday and Sunday at the main stage, we've got headliners Kabaka Pyramid on Saturday and Steel Pulse on Sunday. Mahali is supporting Kabaka Pyramid on Saturday, and Giant Panda Gorilla Dub Squad is supporting Steel Pulse on Sunday. There's a whole bunch of bands. I believe the music starts in the early afternoon, and there's yoga in the morning. There's going to be vendors, food vendors. So come out early, support the local musicians that are playing, and stick around for some great national and international music. Really looking forward to that. Those tickets are available at ithacareggaefest.com. There have been some changes to parking a little bit and transportation. As always, the Stewart Park does fill up a little bit early, but there is parking available across the street at the high school, at Boynton Middle School, and Ithaca High School. And this year, you guys are partnering with a shuttle service. So. And the TCAT bus service, that's right. So if you don't want to walk across, it's only a 10-minute or so walk, but if you don't want to walk, you're welcome to take the shuttle. So really looking forward to that coming up this weekend. Buy your tickets early because they do go up at the gate. And once again, that website is ithacareggaefest.com. Anything else anyone would like to add about the Reggae Fest?
It might rain one drop.
I was also thinking when we were in Jamaica, we went down there and did this thing, but everything is like, let's relax and blah blah blah, and so everybody's super laid back. And then I made the observation until driving, and then they go crazy.
Really?
So I was thinking you could have a representational driving experience from Jamaica where people would fly in every direction on the wrong side of the road.
Okay, right.
And
I think
part of your transportation report.
Right. That's great.
I think, Russ, you need to build this in for next year. Maybe extend into the farmer's market.
It wouldn't be a demolition derby exactly, but it would be very chaotic and intense.
I mean, not dissimilar to driving on 13 on a Saturday on any given
I
weekend.
think New Yorkers have their own reputation, right?
That's true. That's true.
All right, so let's go ahead and shift gears into our interview with Jeb. We have a truly special guest joining us today here on the Pulse of Ithaca. Jeb is a musical pioneer and beloved community figure whose impact resonates far beyond the stage. He's hailing proudly from nearby Trumansburg, New York. He first captured audiences with his prodigious talent in the Bubba George String Band, infusing vibrant new energy into traditional old-time music, a tradition he continues to celebrate to this day. He's best known as the co-founder and charismatic frontman of Donna the Buffalo, a band acclaimed nationwide for their unique blend of Americana, folk, Zydeco, reggae, and rock. With decades of touring, numerous acclaimed albums, and collaborations with legendary artists, his creative voice remains powerful, authentic, and deeply rooted in the community. Beyond his musical artistry, he is also one of the visionary founders behind the iconic Finger Lakes GrassRoots Festival, a transformative event celebrating its 33rd year of united people through music, dance, social activism, and cultural expression. Please join me in warmly welcoming the incredibly talented musician, inspiring songwriter, passionate community organizer, and true Trumansburg original, Jeb Puryear. Jeb, thanks for joining us today.
Well, you made me sound fairly interesting.
Easy to do.
Yeah.
All right. So before we jump into our conversation with Jeb, let's just take a quick moment to spotlight this year's 33rd Annual Finger Lakes GrassRoots Festival, set to take place July 17th to the 20th at the Trumansburg Fairgrounds. This festival offers 4 days of rich international music, dance, art, healing, and community gathering. They have a diverse lineup, as always, bringing in international and national acts. As always, Donna the Buffalo, the host of the festival, along with Lucas Nelson, Lucius and Sema Funk, Sierra Hull, Dobe Ganora, View Farke Toure, Jim Lauderdale, and the Steel Wheels, and Giant Panda Gorilla Dove Squad. How did I do with that, Russ?
Pretty good.
All right, thanks. I practiced a little bit.
You made it. You made it 1/10 down the list.
Yeah,
That's very good.
So there's a dozen more across many different genres.
No.
Zydeco, one of my favorites, of course, with Keith Frank and the Swiley Zydeco Band. Traditional Irish dance with the Byrne Brothers. Native American sounds from Kisakola and his Wild Band of Indians. Global grooves from the Flying Clouds of South Carolina. And, of course, there's funk, reggae, jam bands, world, folk, you name it. Over 80 acts.
And I guess country, right?
Yeah, country.
Lucas Nelson's got to.
Yeah, how did I miss
cover the country?
Yeah, absolutely. And what else do we have here? Beyond the music, as we talked about last week, they have the culture camp that's leading up in the days before the festival. You'll also find dance workshops at the festival. There's art installations, healing art tents. There's children's spaces and local food vendors, all hallmarks of Grassroots Immersive Experience. Tickets are available at grassrootsfest.org. So, Jeb, really looking forward to learning more about the festival, in addition to everything
Sounds
else.
like you know a fair amount about it.
But so I was hoping to talk a little bit about the formation of Buffalo with you, talk about the origins of the Grassroots, and then at the end, talk a little bit about what you're looking forward to this year. And so let's go way back into the 80s, I believe, maybe before that. Can you take us back to the beginning of your musical journey, how you first got into playing old-time music before you got into Donna the Buffalo?
Well, this area was a hotbed, or is a hotbed, for old-time music. And it's strange that, yeah, we were actually just researching. We're actually officially in the Appalachian chain.
That's
at
right.
The very end of
the
it.
northern
right?
part of it. That's right.
But that, let's see here. Well, we had the Highwood String Band and the Correctone String Band, and they used to play at the Cosmos and in and around. And my father was a big old-time music lover.
Okay.
He just thought it was great. And so, yeah, I've made the joke before, you know, that learned how to play the fiddle in a desperate attempt to win my father's approval. You know.
Right.
But anyway, that actually was, I mean, that probably everybody wants to do something, and then so we would go out and see these shows, and there would just be the building right next to the Rongo used to be a restaurant called the Cosmos, and the Highwoods would play there, and the Grectones would play there, and there was a scene that was very happening, and everybody did this dance affectionately known as the hippie hop. Although some aficionados would, clogging types would complain about the hippie hop, but I contend that the hippie hop is a very good dance. And anyway, it's just up and down. The music's rapid. It's just boom, 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 and the floor would be deflecting maybe 6 to 8 inches.
Wow.
In this place, and it was very steamy, and it was just super energetic, just a real beautiful scene. And me being a little kid, I thought this was going on all over the world.
Yeah.
So I figured if I learned how to play fiddle, I'd have it made,
Yeah.
And so, and I don't know. We had a sort of a. I mean, you could really talk for a long time about everything that happened over all the years, but we had a very interesting, rangy household, and we were the house that people would congregate at, and it was back in the early. Well, it was a different time.
Yeah.
And they'd have keggers and this and that, and lots of people. And my mom was instrumental in starting some alternative schools.
Okay.
Like the alternative high school here is an offshoot of that. So it was just a real scene.
Yeah.
And so I was a little younger in that scene, and they were kind of, at one point, Richie Stearns would walk around with a banjo constantly, and he kind of transitioned our scene from two-stroke motorcycles to music. And so before I got, I actually still never ridden a motorcycle, but everybody was riding motorcycles, and we were probably the worst neighbors in the history of the universe,
Right.
out in Brooksdale. But it was a different time. It's hard to explain, but it's hard to imagine now. I mean, we used to just set the speakers facing out, and take the windows out, put the speakers out, and working on motorcycles. And the place was just, we were definitely something that to be avoided. But I was just a kid, so I have a little bit of. But anyway, one day we're in the driveway, and Jordan said, Jeb, he should play the fiddle. He's got nothing better to do. I said, well, sure, I should try that. So anyway, I started to play the fiddle, and there's certain things you work at, and there's certain things you obviously have a knack for, or whatever.
Yeah.
And strangely
It
enough,
came naturally to you.
yeah,
Yeah.
I had a knack for playing the fiddle, and so, and then we would play on the street for quarters or donations. Some people would throw $1. This was back when a quarter actually was, but
Yeah.
and we'd make some money and go buy some pizza, and there's some beer, and we'd go swimming.
That was what you guys did.
That was what happened on the weekend.
Now, was this back in the 60s, the 70s? When was this?
Well, I was born in 1966, and so like late 70s.
Okay.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I started playing fiddle when I was 8.
Okay.
So like from in there.
Okay, gotcha.
And then so what was the original question?
So I guess I guess where I'm going with this is, so you started playing playing fiddle at a very young age. Did you take formal lessons at the time, or were you self-taught? Did your parents teach you? How did that part go?
Well, it was like everybody started playing the fiddle. There was kind of like a fiddle off.
Yeah.
It's like, and then who was going to play the fiddle? Who was going to play the thing? Richie had the banjo covered, and then so we knew some of the people in the Correctone String Band when John Specker was in the Correctone String Band.
Okay.
And Danny Kornblum, and Danny Kornblum was and then his wife Jenny Miller, Amicy Miller was her brother, and he taught me first tunes, and then Danny taught me a bunch of tunes, and then Specker. I don't know if Specker would necessarily teach you a tune right note for note.
Yeah.
But he was like,
you don't learn it by ear, right? He'd play it and then he'd say, "You play it like I'm playing it."
He was sort of musical idol,
Right.
And he was when I was a kid.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I can imitate
right
him playing the fiddle and all that stuff.
So that was in the very beginning. When did you pick up a guitar and start learning how to play the guitar?
So guitar was much later. We started hanging out with Jim Miller, and Jim Miller played guitar, and so I made a joke that I would learn what Jim did as he forgot it, and but I retained it.
Right.
But that being said, he went through a lot of. We didn't really have much of an idea how to organize that type of music. Matter of fact, we tried to start a bunch of bands, and it's kind of hard to get a bunch of people that don't play much of that type of music to create enough structure for it to create a foundation,
Right.
But it seems so simple now. Maybe we were handicapped.
Yeah, right.
Challenged in some fashion. I don't know.
And so
probably from playing so much old time music.
Right.
But so anyway, he came along, and then we'd have to go back to meeting, and Jim played old time fiddle too, and he played a little banjo and played guitar, and so Donna the Buffalo basically started with that same crew that played old time music all those years, and we would have these jams around the holidays, and Richie bought this weird organ for $50 at a yard sale that had this old Lowry organ, and he would have fun with it and go whoop, 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 whoop.
Yeah.
And then so we would have these jams, and Tara wrote songs. So like Richie wrote some songs, and Tara wrote some songs, and Tara wrote some songs that sort of sounded like you might hear on the radio.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a first, like, oh, that's pretty together.
Right, yeah.
And so we kind of strum on those and do this and that. And then we knew other musicians who were in rock bands and stuff. But so eventually, me and Jim, we sort of developed this kind of double guitar playing off of one another style, and we so after one of these I think it was Thanksgiving or whatever, Jenny Stearns was booking the music at the Cabbagetown Cafe, and so she said, well, we should get a gig, because we were doing all these songs, and it was fun.
Yeah.
And so we said, all right. So we practiced for, like before then, we didn't have like a repertoire or anything like that.
Yeah.
So we practiced for a couple weeks, and we did this gig.
Did you have a name for the band at that time?
We did not.
Yeah.
And then one of the first ideas was we're going to be Paul McCartney.
Okay.
and then another. And then various ideas came up. We had never played anything, so
yeah.
And then somebody suggested Dawn of the Buffalo, and then somebody mispronounced it in some kind of like a Long Island accent, like Dawn of the Buffalo.
Yeah.
And then then somebody heard Donna the Buffalo, and Dawn of the Buffalo is way pretentious for where we were at. Okay, you know, I mean, that's so we chose the other name, and then Damien Carr made this cool imagery of this lady buffalo, you know, kind of, and that was kind of our look for a while. And so anyway, we did this gig, and it was really something. It was because playing old time music is thrilling for the people that are playing it, and a few other people they're willing to pay that much attention. Like, you have to be really right in it, like, and then it starts getting you, and you can go crazy, you know, like in a good way. It's extremely good, but to most people, it's like somebody started a lawnmower motor. You know, it's like, I don't know what's going on over there. But you have to listen, really listen. And when you listen, it slows down in your mind, and it becomes very expansive. So it's almost like some Hindi chant or something. You know, it's like it works on certain people, but you have to pay a bunch of attention. And it has an emotional range, but it's not as broad an emotional spectrum as a singer-songwriter, you know, would, or it's a different thing.
Right.
As a matter of fact, you know, at old time festivals, somebody will break into a songwriting thing, and, you know, out of this lady, she came up, she said, "Oh yeah, tell me about your feelings."
Right.
like, give me a break. Let's play some tunes, you know. Anyway,
Right.
So, but that, all that being joked about or said, we did this gig, and people danced right from, they danced to the slow stuff.
Where was the gig at? Was it here?
At Cabbagetown Cafe.
Okay.
Which is in Trumansburg?
No, was right. Everything's gone now.
Okay.
I will tell you where it was.
Yeah, where was it?
It was on Eddy Street.
Okay.
Right across from, you know, up the block from Slovaki House and across the street.
Okay. And so it's College Town then? Or?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, you could do a whole and you should do a whole podcast on, like, the College Town used to be like a revolutionary center of young, revolutionary, hippie, wild culture.
Yeah, no
Seems
kidding.
like something we could get into in the current times.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it would be even hard to imagine right now. I mean,
yeah,
there was a place called the Bank Wall where 200 people would show up every night and drink beer on the wall and hang out and exchange stories or whatever people do.
Right.
But
now, so the band, that was the early years of the band. You talked a little about some of your influences there. Was there any other influences that maybe some of our listeners might know that influenced you all? Was there any kind, because your sound is very original, but you do have that jam band kind of ethos to the band. Where did that come from? Was that just from the old time jams that you used to do?
I think that was a fairly natural occurrence. A lot of people would say we sounded a little like the Grateful Dead.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was wondering, if that was an influence on you.
But strangely enough, I'd never heard the Grateful Dead.
Okay.
I don't think any of us really did.
Yeah, interesting.
And so maybe it was coming from like a acoustic music background and like putting some of that in, like that attitude into. I don't know what the cause of that is.
Yeah.
But it seemed to have, you know, and we're not like the most direct sell on that crowd.
Absolutely.
But we do have a large percentage of people that like our band, enjoyed and followed the Grateful Dead.
Yeah, absolutely. And you guys do have 12, 15, 20-minute songs out there that you stretch out when you're playing live, right? With a lot of improvisation and that kind of thing.
So that would be like when you're playing an old time tune, you play for as long as it's vibrant.
Right. Yeah. And
then-
you're feeding off of the crowd and the energy there,
Yeah.
and it goes longer or shorter depending on what's happening. And
Yeah.
And
And then, of course, if it's going terribly, you can't just end it right away.
right, you have to try to save it.
You
right,
try to save
you gotta,
it somehow.
You got to double down.
Yeah, it's like we're going for it.
Right.
We're not going to let this thing die on the table.
Right.
And so, so anyway, the band started then, and it was really something because we were able to communicate to it was like the audience has already knew. It was very different than playing old time music to an audience. It was much more communicative. So that was a very cool moment. I just remember it's like,
Yeah.
wow, this is
their first gig, and you have a band
we can do this.
that people are going to show up for.
Yeah, no,
yeah.
it was
And
really cool.
how long after that did you release your first album?
Well, let's see.
Was that the Basement tape or?
Yeah, the white tape.
The white tape?
was the first thing we made, and let's see. It's hard.
It's hard to remember.
It's hard to remember
Yeah.
exactly, but
Okay.
it wasn't that long.
Yeah.
And then,
Were there songs from that first gig that made it onto the album?
oh yeah,
Yeah. Absolutely.
yeah.
And what were some of the challenges that you all faced as the early band trying to sort it out in those early years? Do you remember any challenges or things that you guys had to overcome as you became a touring band and trying to get all that together and recording and trying to take it to the next level and get out of town and start touring around?
I guess a big challenge at first when you're in a band is to try to get everyone that's in the band to feel like being in a band.
Right.
Like it's hard, because most people have lives and
Day jobs, family commitments.
family commitments, other bands,
Right.
like Richie, the Horseflies were doing quite well. Tara was in the Heartbeats, and they were doing nicely. Jim had a job at the Natural History Museum. He's a scientist. So
Yeah.
it's pretty easy, like if somebody's talented and they're following through on a lot of projects, to become very busy. And then being a band is very time consuming.
Yeah.
So to get a group of people that's willing to do it, and then certain people, they're at a certain point they're not. They're like, I don't want to do this anymore. And
Right.
if that at first would bug me a little more than it does now.
Yeah.
I'm much more understanding about it.
Right, absolutely. And the band has had obviously a lot of lineup changes over the years, but you and Tara continue to be the two founding members that have kind of carried the band on over the decades. When did you first realize that Donna the Buffalo was becoming something more than just a local band? Was there a moment when you realized that you were really breaking through in the national stage or starting to really tour outside of the area, and you realized that you had something that was sustainable?
It's kind of a tricky question because, like, when you're inside something, it looks a lot different
It's
than
more gradual.
yeah. Like nobody tells you all of a sudden it's like, wow, you guys are really doing good or whatever. You always it's basically depending on your outlook at that very moment. You're either doing terrible or you're doing fine. And I often make the observation that this business, or it's not a business, the life tends to make a lot of really talented people feel like something the cat dragged in, because it's just like the Beatles were really good,
Right.
and they did really well, and you're obviously not doing as good as that.
Right. So you just feel like you're in the struggle and you're just taking a day and a year at a time. And
Yeah, but at the same time, if you're lucky enough to be in a band that has a great night, you're in a very small percentage of people that are able to have that experience. It's truly remarkable.
yeah.
Were there a
Like-
couple of those like early on that like stuck out though? Like was there like one or two shows that were like, I think that was the one.
Well, that first gig was like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
That's an amazing. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, it was
Yeah.
very remarkable.
that feels special then.
Yeah, and we were just very. It always had this family tight, you know. I mean, we all loved each other.
Yeah.
You know, or still, you know.
Yeah.
But that's, you know, it was the expression of that.
Yeah.
And then so back to the old time thing. The old time music had like that personal relationship and that intimacy or whatever. It that was kind of the thing we carried over
Right.
into the other music, and that's so a lot of times you say, well, we were influenced by old time music, but we don't play anything that sounds like old time music.
Right.
Like the Horseflies maybe would be like, well, they took old time music and they put drums to it and they did a different beat, but we were just playing songs. But that's something about the attitude and the way the music leans on each other and creates a oneness. It's not unique to us, but it is what carried over from.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is fascinating. I learned a lot. I've been a lifelong fan of Donna the Buffalo. Actually, in the early 2000s is when my wife first took me to GrassRoots. I've told this story before, but it's just nice to hear the backstory of what happened before I found out about you guys and learn a little bit more about that. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
I'd like to shift gears a little bit and talk about the origins of the GrassRoots Festival and that's history. From what I understand, GrassRoots started as an AIDS benefit back in 1990 at the State Theater. Can you tell us a little bit about how that idea came about to host your own kind of concert, and then how did that evolve into the festival up here in Trumansburg?
Well, back to like the musical community there, and we were talking about like a bunch of different people being in a bunch of different bands, and so the first concert was an idea of Jim Miller's to create musical camaraderie between groups, because the Horseflies were going good and we shared Richie with them,
Yeah.
and so on and so forth. And so that was kind of like, that was the initial impetus of it. And then we were running around looking for a place to have it and so on and so forth. And then at one point it was like, well, if we do this thing, we kind of wanted to remove this entrepreneurial thing out of it. And so we decided to make it a benefit. And then we were looking for someone to make it a benefit for. And then, so this is slightly different than a lot of benefits. They're cause first driven, like some, and then
They come up with an event based on their cause.
Yeah, but we kind of came up with an event and then chose a cause. And so we knew a couple of people that work for AIDS work. Ruby Max Fury, and I'm forgetting her name right now. But anyway, they were great, and they were doing really good work. And so we chose them. And then, so we had Donna the Buffalo, the Horseflies, and Neon Baptist, and we did that show. And it really picked up a spirit.
Yeah.
And so that was it was just great. Everybody uses the word synergy now,
Yeah.
but it was synergetic.
And if I remember correctly, that was a single day festival downtown at the State Theater.
Yeah, it was just a concert. It was
just
evening.
a concert. Yeah.
It was great. And it had a very lovely, magical thing about it. So anyway, when we're in it, kind of mobilized, like we got in gear and did something.
Yeah.
It was really cool. And so I was back, I don't know where I moved away for a couple of years and I came back, and so we were doing this thing and I didn't have a job, and so I just started picking up the pieces and making phone calls and haranguing people and talking them out of whatever
Yeah.
to help get this thing going. And so I pretty much developed a knack for that.
Yeah. And you just dedicated yourself to trying to get the festival off the ground.
And then so that happened. It was great. And then, we don't have to really get into that part too much. But there was a little there was some snafuism where kind of Donna the Buffalo disbanded temporarily. And so I thought that if we did this festival, we'd have to get back together.
Yeah.
Which sort of worked. And but that's
another story.
Yeah, I mean it's fairly immaterial. So decided to do it at the fairgrounds.
Was there anything going on like that at the time at the fairgrounds? Were they hosting multi-day festivals, or what was it being used for back? Just
the fair's been going on for like 182 years or something like that.
So that was pretty much the main event there every year was
Yeah.
the fair, and then it wasn't really used that much.
And there was a fiddle contest held there one year,
Okay.
and we went out there.
And was that kind of like the spark that was like, oh, hey, maybe we could do a festival here?
I don't know. I always liked it,
Yeah.
you know. And then I thought it would be good because everybody knows where it is,
Yeah.
which is a good thing. You know, a lot of people won't go somewhere they've never been,
Right.
but they'll go somewhere for a big reason, maybe.
Yeah.
But they're more likely to go somewhere that they've been already and feel familiar. So I think that was something that worked in our favor. And so did that. My mom came up with the name Grassroots. And then we just started having these weekly meetings and yakking, and that was back in the phone days.
Yeah.
And like I had like a phone in one ear and a phone in the other. There's a little P.T. Barnum making a lot of promises that
Right.
you may or may not be able to. You know.
Yeah.
I guess the healthy. You know, a lot of projecting.
Yeah, absolutely.
You'd be like,
you're hoping the momentum will carry you through it.
This is what's going to happen, and it's going to be cool. So the first year, so we borrowed $5,000 from our friend Sally. She was very gracious.
God bless her.
And then we sold ads in the program, and that was it. The first year's budget was $78,000.
The first year.
Yeah.
$78,000.
Yeah.
That's a big number for a first year festival back in 1990.
That's an incredibly small number.
Oh, is it?
Okay. An event that size.
I thought you were going to say 7,800. Wow, that's amazing that you were able to come up with that kind of money.
We didn't.
Oh, you did? Okay, that was the budget.
So anyway, so this is like in the nature of projecting or whatever. So I talked to some business people, and they were like, talk to them and say, if things go well, we get paid. And
Yeah.
and then he did say, they're not going to remember that part of the conversation. And he was right. It was, and I was pretty young. I never owed any, we never had any money.
Yeah.
Like none.
Mm-hmm.
Like one time everybody was into ping pong when we were little, and the last ping pong ball broke.
That was it.
And
you guys never played again.
No, we got some more eventually, but it wasn't like we just ran out to the store and got some.
Right.
I mean, it was in a couple weeks.
Right.
There was enough money to go get a couple more ping pong balls and play. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That just as a point of reference. But anyway, so it was quite stressful.
I bet.
But
were you able to enjoy yourself when you were on stage? Were there a few moments there where?
Oh yeah.
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 And then what happened to make you decide that you could do it again? Like, what was that moment where you're like, yeah, we should do this annually?
Well, the whole idea was to do it annually. But, I mean, it was stressful enough to consider not doing it.
Right.
I think, like Jordan was like, fuck that, we're definitely doing it or whatever.
Yeah,
but,
right.
Which is cool. And then, of course, it didn't help that, at one point, before we did the first one, it was like this benefit thing, and he said, "Well, tell them we're going to raise them $100,000."
Right.
Which is
ambitious.
Yeah, which led to a little bit of misunderstanding when there was,
there was a bill.
Yeah, there was a bill, not
a donation.
But the bill didn't have to get, we kind of eked through. It wasn't like we were bad.
It didn't get sent to bill collectors or whatever. You were able to survive for another year and build off of that foundation.
And then the second year was a little bit like that too. And then the third year we broke even. And then but I remember talking to my friend Alan Marshall the second year. I was like, whew, this is pretty stressful. And and of course, none of these people actually had, asked, borrowed the money or made the promise. Like if you're on the phone and you're doing all this projecting, you kind of have a little more of a target on you than if you're just kind of not engaged in that part of it.
Right.
But my friend Alan Marshall, he looked out and he goes, I don't know, Jeb, but he says, this doesn't look like something that's going to stop.
Right.
And so that just like is an energetic thing. It's like it doesn't really too much matter whether you came up short or just made a little bit or,
Yeah, it's so, this is a vehicle. It's driving down the road. It's going to keep going.
Yeah, it's kind of had something that was moving. And he was right.
That's amazing.
And then so, the third and then fourth year we made just a little money. And then the fifth year was, I think they had that Woodstock on the same weekend.
Okay, 1994?
What's that,
94? It was 94, 95? Yeah, right around there,
I don't know. Sometimes I get my dates mixed up. But I remember being very worried about that.
Yeah.
But we had because Rusted Root was a big part of the grassroots success story as well. They came second, third year. And so there were some powerful groups. There's Donna the Buffalo. The Horseflies were really cooking. And, of course, we had 10,000 Maniacs the first year.
Okay, yeah.
And they had like a number 3 song in the country.
Right.
And so a great... But, I mean, you want to talk about some rain. Multiple drops.
Right. Multiple drops. 2 or 3 that day.
2 more than one. It started raining first thing in the morning, and it did not stop.
Right, the whole festival.
The Saturday. Just the whole
day.
It was really, really, So, that was... Yeah. And then we made it through, and then the whole idea was that we have gone to festivals a lot, and they have a momentum. Yeah. Like you go there, and some magical stuff happens.
Yeah.
You have a shared bond with some people you went with. There's always something amazing happens.
Yeah.
At some point.
Absolutely.
And it develops its own momentum. It's like, I want to be a part of this. I'm definitely going next year.
Absolutely.
And so that was the whole idea, was to take that first state theater show, turn it into a festival, and have it, because one show at a theater doesn't have, I mean, I guess you could make it an annual event, but it doesn't quite have the thing that a festival does.
Are there any specific memorable moments from those early years that really stick out to you in terms of performances that you participated in or acts that were here that really resonate with you?
Probably too many to pick one out.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
Just countless. I mean, there's been some very, very powerful people come to grassroots from early on, like Thomas Mafumo and well, yeah. I mean, the list is
just too long. We just have to go through and look at the headliners.
Yeah,
for the past 30 years.
It's just.
All right.
It's too many.
Yes.
We had one of my favorite shows was Merle Haggard.
Okay.
Came, and that was, and there's some stuff about the festival that, well, there's many things about the festival. One is you come for one band and you walk away loving 12 bands.
That's right, yeah.
And having this great time with people. So you can have this musical momentum that maybe business-wise, a band can't do on their own, but you can have this scene that just happens right out of the blue,
right.
because it's all there. And so that's one thing about a festival. The other thing about a festival is that people can develop a commonality, like you're all at the same park. You can start talking to a stranger because you're all sharing the same experience.
Absolutely.
And so there's a bond that grows there.
Absolutely.
And it crosses racial lines and cultural divides and so, and even though culturally I don't think we've been articulately divided as we are now.
Right.
It's always been there, And so and also I'm a big fan of country music.
Yeah.
But having country bands brings elements in there. So we've tried to remain a very cultural event, but the structure of the event to be culturally neutral, so anyone would feel comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Coming and enjoying.
And I think you've done an amazing job with that. I know my first time being there back in the early 2000s, I felt very just liberated being there. I didn't, it was just very easygoing. You know what I mean? You walk around in t-shirt, shorts, and flip-flops. You didn't have to, dress a certain way or be a certain way. It was just a very carefree kind of experience, and everybody was accepting no matter what you look like or what kind of background you had. So it's definitely a very inclusive and inviting place. Can you talk a little bit about the role that the local community here in Trumansburg and Ithaca have played in the growth and the ongoing success of grassroots?
Well, I would say this, that I think, like most good ideas, I mean, the idea already exists before it's happened, know, and so grassroots seems like one of those things. It's like it had all the makings of it were already there. It just happened to be this. So that you would say you could attribute to the local environment of community and so on and so forth.
Absolutely. And you all have done a great job of building infrastructure at the fairgrounds over the years. The showers, I'm a huge fan of that new shower setup that you all installed a few years ago. You now have the across the way camping from the land that you purchased there. Yeah. That's been a great addition. So it's so nice that you all have been able to help, build out this area and build out the festival grounds.
I think a lot of people have moved to this area.
Absolutely.
Because of grassroots, actually.
Myself included.
Oh, there
you
go.
Absolutely. My wife and I moved here from Buffalo after coming down here every year for grassroots and then coming down for the Reggae Fest and hanging out in the Finger Lakes. And we're like, why are we driving back and forth from Buffalo every weekend? We should start looking for jobs down here.
Yeah.
So thank you for getting me down this way. It's changed my life.
Yeah. We've probably ruined a few lives.
Right.
Probably helped a few.
That's right. That's amazing. All right, so let's switch gears a little bit and talk about what's going on this year at Grassroots. We talked about some of the bands that are performing this year. You all are entering your, what, is it the 33rd year of the festival? What
It's gotten complicated since the COVID
right,
shift,
because it started in 1990,
and then we had
there's-
29B.
right.
Which, so I personally have lost a little track.
Yeah. So, can you tell us a little bit about any particular bands that you're looking forward to this year, and kind of what you're looking forward to specifically for this year?
Well, let's see. I'm kind of a repeat guy.
Same.
I mean, I'll always look forward to seeing Keith Frank,
Yeah, absolutely.
and I think I've seen Lucas Nelson a few times, and he's got
Awesome. I'm really looking forward to that show.
Great band,
Yeah.
and so, and then all the stuff.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, it's going to be great.
I'm not really the one to ask. I mean, I go doing my little stuff.
Who does the lineup? Who brings in all these international?
It's top secret.
Okay, fair enough. How do you all go about choosing the diverse lineup? Is there? It seems to be that there's.
It's a part of the secret I just mentioned.
Okay, yeah, I'm really trying to dig in here. I just want to know, like, do you have? I know that you bring in, like, Daka Braka has been here a couple of times, and I've been completely overwhelmed with their performances, as a lot of people have.
Yep.
And you do such a great job of not only including the local bands from the area. Bands like Giant Panda Gorilla Dub Squad, which is one of my favorites, and Donna the Buffalo, and all the other local musicians. But you do a great job bringing in bands from Africa, bands I've never heard of, bands I can't pronounce.
Yeah.
So that has to be deliberate as you're planning out your headliners.
Yeah, I mean, when we're starting, there wasn't as many festivals when we started, and so the kind of thought would be like, well, if we got like a really good reggae band, a great bluegrass band, like a band that somebody would travel a couple of states,
Yeah.
to go see, and so like oh shoot, I'm forgetting his name, but Toots and the Maytals is a great example.
Yeah,
of
absolutely.
Like, that was a
Internationally known.
great booking for grassroots.
Yeah,
Somebody would travel 2.5 states to go see Toots and the Maytals,
absolutely.
but maybe not so much. And the landscape has changed.
You're right,
Bit.
absolutely. There's a lot more festivals.
There's a lot more festivals, and then kind of Bonnaroo sort of took the spectrum of what a festival is kind of into a not that there's anything wrong with it, but it's just more of a giant concert.
It's a kind of a capitalist venture as well, I think, to some extent.
I think there was some capital involved.
Yeah. Well, you just talk about the fact that, you all allow people to bring in coolers and bring in food, which I think is not very common anymore in modern day festivals. A lot of times you have to come in and pay for everything. So if you want to be there all day or all weekend, it really costs a small fortune to sustain yourself. So that's one of my favorite things about the festival is you stuck with kind of your grassroots type of feel where you can bring in your own coolers, and you do have food vending, and you do have a beer tent and that type of thing. So
I think one of the things that's made grassroots interesting is to try to not try to. I mean, we actually succeed in letting it be known that it's the people that come, it's their festival, and so the less whatever grassroots does, as far as like telling people to go left when they want to go right, or tell them to eat when they want to drink and drink when they want to eat, or walk on their hands, or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, so we try to keep it very minimal of what grassroots is trying to tell, like what do they want, And I remember I was walking through some food tent, and there was somebody cooking, and it was our food tent, and the lady was like, well, I don't know, it's whatever they want,
Right.
And I just looked at her, I said, we or they.
right.
So, I don't know.
That's perfect. Well, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I do have just a couple more questions for you. Looking back, what are you most proud of accomplishing, musically or otherwise, in your journey so far? Is there anything?
I sort of tend to look at it. There's just like a real basic thing of like being able to practice doing it. It's like it's a privilege to, you know, try to play music, learn about it. It's like an endless thing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so that as an overall, there's been various performances that go extremely well where things just click. They start happening automatically, and it's not it's or some people refer to as it's an act of not doing,
Right.
but while doing, you know. And so there's that. Ended up writing a symphony for the orchestra, and they played it last year. So that was such a different thing.
Right.
That was a very remarkable thing to be involved in.
That is remarkable.
And so, yeah, I mean, there's many, but there's, you know, it's hard to say just one.
Yeah.
But there's been lots of real powerful experiences to be a part of. Like,
yeah.
You know, and it's a real treat.
I'll say one of my favorite memories of the festival was when I stayed up all night with you in the dance tent playing Zydeco music, and the sun came up and you stumbled down the hill. This was a few years ago, and you got behind the counter and started serving pizza. And me and my wife.
You mean I gracefully strolled down?
Yeah. What did I say? Stumble?
Yes. Yeah. I don't believe I stumbled, but if you say so.
Right.
So he said scenario.
So hopefully you'll be serving pizza up again this year. I always get a kick out of seeing you back there. All right. So before we close, is there anything else that we didn't cover today that you'd like to share with our listeners?
You know, there's a bunch. You know, you could talk for a long time about all the aspects of grassroots.
Yeah.
You know, the one thing that I would like to, I'd like to always put forward is that there's some people out there that probably have decided the grassroots is not their thing,
mm-hmm.
and I would encourage them to take a second thought about that, because it's a very fun thing. It has some aspects that people talk about of having kind of a loving vibe or whatever, but it's also very normal. It's like nobody's going to like.
and there's something for everybody, right? You can come in the morning and hear the orchestra, right? You can go into the dance tent or the cabaret hall. You can show up at 9:00 at night and hang out in the infield with thousands of people and dance.
So
and sing.
there's a lot of stuff in the. You know, ultimately, it's about bringing people together, and you know, we as human beings, we struggle being peaceful and happy.
Yeah.
And so this is an attempt to be peaceful and happy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it feels really important right now.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day. And we'll have to get you back out again to share some of these other stories with us, maybe next season.
All right.
So we'll
thanks.
call you back. So thanks again, Jeb, for joining us and giving us a look behind the scenes of both your music and legacy of the GrassRoots Festival. Your dedication to building community through creativity, collaboration, and good vibes is something truly special. So thank you, sincerely.
Appreciate it.
Just a reminder, the 33rd Annual Finger Lakes GrassRoots Festival takes place July 17th through the 20th, right here in Trumansburg at the fairgrounds, with 4 days of music, dance, art, and connection across multiple stages. It's one of the most beloved gatherings in the region, and for a good reason. For full tickets and the artist lineup, camping info, and everything else you need to know, head over to grassrootsfest.org. And don't forget to catch Donna the Buffalo out on tour this summer. You can find their schedule at donnathebuffalo.com. And that pretty much wraps up another episode of the Pulse of Ithaca podcast. We realize that you have a lot of options, and thank you all for tuning in and spending your time with us. Big shout out to all our listeners in Ithaca and around the world. You make this show possible. I'm your host, Pete, and of course, we hope you enjoyed this episode and look forward to doing it with you again soon. If you have an event or story or local favorite you want us to cover, reach out to us on social media or shoot us an email. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep your finger on the pulse of Ithaca and make the most of this place we call home. Take care, everyone.